Chapter 11, Shaggy. The spooky old elevator started to move down. Scoob and I clung to each other, shaking and shivering. It kept going until it brought us down to an old laboratory full of weird tubes and beakers. We stepped out of the elevator and saw glowing randominium that Fred had told us about speckled around the place.
Like Clutopia,
I said. We'd hit the clue jackpot. We went in opposite directions to search every inch of the lab. The first thing I discovered was a massive metal door. On it was odd writing, just like the ancient writing in the How to Make a Monster book the gang had found in Old Man Wickless's library. I yanked hard on the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Looking over my shoulder, I saw Scooby open a big metal refrigerator. Inside were beakers full of colorful chemical and bowls of something gloppy and glowing. Scooby dipped his paw in and scooped up the stuff, licking it. "Rogert," he said. The next interesting thing I discovered was some pretty complicated video equipment. A camera on a tripod was aimed at a green wall and a video monitor was mounted on another wall beside it. I stood in front of the green wall and waved at the camera. My face appeared on the monitor, but instead of there being a green wall behind me, it looked like I was standing in front of the Great Wall of China. "Look, Scoob, I'm in China," I said, waving. I pushed a button and the monitor still showed my face, but now I seemed to be in front of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France. Strange. Scooby didn't say anything in reply, so I looked over to see what he was doing. "Zoink!" I cried. Instead of Scooby, I saw a freakishly bizarre monster standing right where Scooby had been just a minute ago. I screamed, and the monster looked over his shoulder.
Shaggy?
He asked.
Scooby,
"Dude."
you turned into
"Yao Ming," I said. Scoob looked at himself in the shiny surface of a metal table. Then he started screaming. I suddenly figured out what had happened. The glowing stuff that he'd eaten had turned him into something else. "Oh, man."
There's gotta be
"Like,"
an antidote in here somewhere.
I said. Frantic to help my pal, I started pushing aside beakers and test tubes. Some green liquid spilled on my hand. "Oh, crud," I cried. I was shaking all over. When I stopped, I thought I hadn't changed at all. But then I looked down and realized I was a girl. Oh yeah.
I've got a chick's body.
Scooby still looked like some crazy dog version of Yao Ming. I had to do something. Fast. I kept searching through all the scientific stuff on the table. I found some bottles that were marked with NA on their label. "Maybe A stands for antidote," I said to Scooby. "Let's try it out." We each took a beaker marked A and drank from it. By the time Scooby was done drinking, he'd grown a huge brain out of the top of his head. The good news was, I wasn't a chick anymore. The bad news was, I'd become extremely muscular, a regular Mr. America. "Ah, knowledge, you hideous plague," Scooby said, but his words sounded like they should have come from someone brainy.
"Oh, I long for the blissful ignorance of my former self."
"Alas, perhaps I can brew some chemical concoction that will restore me to the simple, delighted creature I once was." He turned back to the chemicals and began mixing a little of this and a little of that. Scooby wasn't the only one undergoing a brain change. "Yeah,
I'm Buff.
I shouted. My mind as well as my body had become super macho. I felt out of control strong.
"Check out my pecs, little man!"
I boasted to Scooby as I flexed my arm muscles. I flexed until my veins bulged and my hand felt ready to explode. "Be still, Olf," Scooby scolded me as he mixed chemicals. Even though I wasn't a super genius like Scooby, I knew he was trying to change us back to our old selves. Our old dumb, puny selves.
"No way!"
"Brainiac," I yelled, snatching a beaker out of his hand.
"I'm gonna stay this way forever!"
I tossed the beaker toward the huge door. Scooby yelled. Too late. Kaboom! The beaker exploded in a giant black cloud as it hit the door. The sound of our coughing filled the room. But when Scoob and I stopped, we heard other hacking coughs in the room. In another few minutes the smoke cleared and we saw Velma, Daphne, and Fred just outside the elevator.
This
Dithering buffoon practically killed us, Scooby explained to them.
go boob.
I said, stunned by the explosion. Scooby held out a beaker full of chemicals to me. When I didn't take it, he grabbed my head and poured it down. Then he gulped down the remainder. More shaking, and then we were back to ourselves. Whoa, I said, holding my head. What the heck? Fred asked.
I invented erosion.
Scooby told him proudly.